Hey guys, Budcat7 here. Okay, it is Thursday, February 3rd, 2022, and I'd like to thank you for visiting the Stonewall Research channel here on YouTube. I really do appreciate it. All right, guys, we are going to continue with my series Legends of Giants, and in this video, we're going to take a look at Legends of Giants in Russia. And the reason why I think it's so important to look at the legends of the Giants, on a country by country basis here, is to get really a full picture of what the Giants were all about, the history of the Giants, and just history in general, because so much of history has been suppressed and is currently being suppressed for whatever reasons. Whether it's the obstinacy of the academic elites or just ignorance or refusal to believe in any other alternative explanations or whatever. But I think in order to get the proper picture of what the giants, quote unquote giants, or large hominids, humanoids, were all about, is to first look at the current archaeology and anthropology and what they found, at least what they found, not necessarily what they make of it, what they interpret it as. That doesn't have anything to do with what really might be what it's all about. So it's important to look at what they find, but not necessarily of what their interpretation of it is. And then also the accounts of the discovery of the skeletal remains of the giants throughout the Victorian period and earlier than that, where some of these things were unearthed without the benefit of any sort of, official academic oversight or anything along those lines. So, but it's still important to look at what was found. It's just, people giving honest accounts of what was found, perhaps not handled properly or in the best way, because we had the early stages of archaeology beginning to develop during those times. But nevertheless, whatever we are able to get out of these accounts helps us understand things a bit more. And I don't think it would be complete without legends of giants in various parts of the world, because they reveal things to us as well, as we know, based on what current anthropologists and archaeologists are dealing with today, and at least some of them taking the myths and legends more seriously for whatever sort of truths they might be based on. So it's important to get the overall picture of these things, because we have to know what the truth is about the giants and what the truth is about our past. So what's interesting to me mostly is that a lot of these legends and myths of giants, there seem to be a majority of them, have to do with sort of more sympathetic or revered persons, these giants. And, I think after all we've sort of researched already on this channel, I mean, it seems to me like we owe the giant humanoids of the past an incredible debt. and when we look at these things, these myths and legends, and the actual anthropology and archaeology that's done on some of these things, as we know, the Bell Beaker people brought with them metallurgy, agriculture, engineering, mound building, et cetera, with them into Europe, and then taught people at some point in time, some later point, where regular Homo sapien human beings are occupying these areas, and the stories of them imparting all these knowledge to these people, besides all these crafts and everything else, and perhaps more complicated things that we don't know about. I mean, you have metallurgy, agriculture, ceramics, pottery, um, weapons, engineering, all these things. And we have to be honest with ourselves now. And I think it's going to be a big revelation here when you come to realize, after looking at all the profile points of the giants, is that it seems to me that the human race is taking a lot of credit for things that they had nothing to do with. Okay? If it's true that these giant humanoid type people were the ones who brought all this technology with it and then taught it to people like us, for example, okay, then we're not responsible for, being the originators of any of these things at all. We have no problem taking credit for it, but it seems to me, if we want to take what we've learned so far about the giants, is that we can't take any credit for anything. They were the ones that handed it us on a silver platter, and we ran with the ball. And we're making assumptions about our race, about our species, that just aren't true at all. Okay? So, at some point later on, I'm going to do a more serious look at the profile points of the giants. And I think anybody cannot deny that it doesn't bear out any of this sort of opposite alternative view, like the Marzulis of this world, that these giants were malevolent. It seems they were mostly benevolent, and it seems to be born out of just standard archaeology and anthropology, that this is what the truth is. Okay, that they're narrowly focused on the cannibalistic giants and where those stories may come from in the world, if there are any more other than those ones in the Paiute Indians with the Lovelock Cave people, and what was in the Bible with Joshua going in there and killing all those people who never did anything to the Hebrews at all. And, people are going to say, well, hey, Budcat, what proof is there that there was a giant genocide in the past? Well, I think Galena Canyon explains it all. And that's why C.W. Saram was trying to tell us about it, because he believed that it was being suppressed for more than one reason, that these people were some different phenotype, were larger, and that, Native American native peoples, like the peaceful Pueblos, were the ones who exterminated these people at a site in the Americas here, an incredible archaeological site that's being completely ignored. And why would that be? The rancher who originally found them called them Torreons, said they were 25 to 30 foot high castles of this cut limestone block, these beautiful castle type torreons there in Galena Canyon, 500 of them, but totally ignored and totally avoided by archaeology in the Americas. And C.W. Saram wanted to know why. And Frank C. Hibbins' extensive archaeological study of the site is completely ignored. Okay, now why is that? Okay, now some of the propaganda and rabbit holes that about the giants seem to me to be about the fact that the giants were the ones chiefly responsible for handing the human race all of these skills and crafts. And not only that, if we go by the Iroquois or the Haudenosaunee with the great law of peace and the great peacemaker, the big man who passed on this extremely sophisticated social structure to these people. This is one of the profile points of the giants. Them passing on all these things to us. Okay, well, it seems highly unlikely that they were cannibals. Okay, and it seems highly likely that they're responsible for passing on to us a great deal of knowledge that we're taking credit for that we had nothing to do with. Okay, so as we're proud of our legacy as human beings, Homo sapiens. It's great to be proud of your legacy if you had one, but you don't have one. See? Okay, so that's a problem. So why is that? All right, so we talk about all these things at some later time when we go over the profile points of the giants, because whereas the other Marzulli type channels are narrowly focused on these few stories of the cannibalistic giants that they make such hay about and everything. Okay, I've given you dozens of stories here already about how the giants are not these creatures at all. In fact, quite the opposite. All right, and here's another one, okay, of this Svyatogor from Russia here as a sort of sympathetic figure, a tragic figure, a heroic figure in their folklore and their legends, not a malevolent one like we heard so much about in the UK there in certain areas, all right, and from a few places in the Americas or whatever it is, but in the majority it seems to be all these sort of positive stories about the giants, okay, as we've talked about on this channel, okay. You've never heard anything about the good giants before you came to this channel, okay. Why is that? Because at the very least, if you're a rational person, okay, you're going to say to yourself, well, yeah, there was these stories of the cannibalistic giants, but there are also these stories of the good giants as well. All right? At the very least, if you don't want to dismiss those cannibal stories as simply propaganda and you want to take them seriously, it doesn't matter. You still have to admit you have all these other stories of positive aspects of the giants. Well, what about them? You're going to sit there and just say, well, I heard there were cannibals and the Bible says this and whatever, and not acknowledge all the rest of it based on those few stories, right? And even if there were good and bad giants and fast, which does not surprise anybody, there's good and bad regular people today, right? But you're not going to say that they were all bad, right? Because that seems highly unlikely. So, and here we have all the legends and tales and the actual archaeology and anthropology to bear a lot of that out. Okay, and what these people brought with them into the various places on the earth and then gave it all away. That doesn't seem very selfish to me. It doesn't sound like the attitude of some cannibalistic wild man, going crazy, bloodthirsty, crazy on everybody. That's not what these stories are all about. right? Even the sort of malevolent ones, they seem to have reasons why. Like the ones in the UK there, that after a certain time period, where after most of these giants died off and everything, they tried to hide in various places and were just harassed, endlessly harassed. There's so few of them, no backup there. You know, these are the kind of stories. You can see all these different sort of stories going on from the past with the giants and their demise and their heyday, etc., etc. But again, if you want a clear example of the giant genocide going on in the world, well, Galena Canyon is direct evidence of it. Period. End of story. These people who were extremely sophisticated, built all these gorgeous buildings and decorated them inside and had all these skills in engineering and everything, were attacked in the middle of the night and summarily executed everybody. Men, women, children, babies, everybody. Okay? So we don't find any cannibals today living in sophisticated societies other than the weirdo pizza cult, or whatever these people are doing today, all the weirdos in our societies, in our modern society, other than that. But you find no cannibalism going on in advanced societies on this planet at all. It's the ultra primitive societies, okay, not ones that are building ultra sophisticated buildings with ergonomics built into them and all sorts of, art and decorations and everything else, and a hierarchical system of social organization. All right. So let's take a look at this legend from Russia here, this tragic hero, the sympathetic character, giant character, the Svyatogor, and see what it's all about. Svatagora is the giant warrior in Russian mythology and folklore. His name is a derivation of the words sacred mountain, quote unquote. He and his mighty steed are so large that when they ride forth, the crest of his helmet sweeps away the clouds. He was the last of the giants, and there are two stories of how he ended his life. Now, it's interesting to me that, here he is, with a large horse, okay, and we always find these giants, there's been a number of times where we find these giants in folklore and legend, like Gargantua in France, for example, and even Paul Bunyan in the Americas with Big Blue, his ox there, Blue there. So, giants associated with a giant horse. Okay, now are horses giant too in the past? Well, maybe. There certainly are some awfully big horses. You see, one of this horse's legs like weighs as much as one of these people over here. Okay, these horses weigh like 2,000 pounds, 3,000 pounds. Okay, this was Big Jake over there in where is he, in Wisconsin or Michigan or something like that, and he passed away just recently, Big Jake. But there was some awfully big horses, and where'd they come from? These giant horses. Well, it seems that all these animals in the world had bigger and smaller counterparts. How about this one here? That guy's a big old guy right there. And when I was down in Busch Gardens in Florida, my ex-wife and I went to go look at some of these horses there. And they were just huge. just amazingly huge. Just they were so giant and gigantic. It's just like it's so awesome when you come and see those Clydesdales. They were just gigantic horses, man. I was just like just awestruck looking at them up close. It's a whole different story when you look at them up close, man. They're just gigantic. I've been around plenty of regular horses, and I can ride myself. I had a lot of horseback lessons, and horses are big to begin with, but I mean these Clydesdale horses are just gigantic, just incredible, and they're beautiful. And horses are smart. Look at this guy right here. Look at that little girl with that horse right there. Like the head of the horse weighs as much as the little girl there. You know, could a giant be riding these horses? Well, certainly people who are like 8 and 9 feet tall ride this horse like no problem. But this little girl on the back of the horse there is an average sized person, right? She's gonna look like a peewee. I know when I had my Kawasaki Ninja ZX9R, I looked like a little peewee on that bike. It's a big 1000cc bike. Not really my size. It's like on my tippy toes on that bike until they redesigned it, and nobody like my height could like fit comfortably on that bike. But it was a nice bike. But in any case, there sure are some big old horses, and we heard repeated stories. And again, these people come from the areas. Again, I did a video about the lost military units of Tartary, these horse people that went everywhere in Europe, in Russia, etc. All these people that had a lot to do with horses. The Hungarians are all Turkic horse people, and they are amazing with horses, just like the Cossacks are as well. They're all horse people that come from the steppes. This is a vast area of the other continents on this world. So, all right. So he had a big old horse. He was the last of the giants, and there are two stories of how he ended his life. The story of Svyatogor's passing away appears as an episode in the larger tale of Ilya Muromets, Russia's greatest hero warrior from mythology, from pagan mythology, etc. So, having heard of the giant's strength, Muromets comes to challenge him, despite being forewarned not to do so by pilgrims who had miraculously healed him. On the road, Ilya Muromets sees a giant asleep on a giant horse. Ilya decides to strike him with his mace. The first time, the giant does not even flinch. Ilya then decides to strike again, and again, the giant did not flinch. The third time Ilya struck, however, the giant jerked upright in his saddle. Seeing who had hit him, he deftly picked Ilya up by the hair and dropped him into his pouch. Sometime later, Svatagor's horse stumbled and complained that carrying 2 knights was too much, even for him. Svyatogor took Ilya out of his pouch, and seeing that he was a knight of Hol's Russia, suggested that the two of them ride together as brothers. This they did for many days until they came to a huge stone coffin lying beside a tree. Ilya leaped off his horse and lay down in the coffin. It was too large for him, but it fit Svyatogor perfectly. Even though Ilya Muromets pleaded with him not to put the lid on, Svyatogor did not listen. However, when he asked Ilya to remove the lid, Ilya found it far too heavy. 3 times he hit it with his mace, but each time he hit it, a steel band closed around the coffin, securing the lid. Svatagora blew some of his strength into Ilya so that he could use the giant's own sword, but this just made matters worse. For now, 2 steel bands closed around the coffin, every time it was hit with the sword. Resigning himself to his fate, Svatagora had Ilya tie his horse to a tree to die right beside its master. Ilya sadly rode away from the coffin, knowing that Svyatogor, the last of the giants, would shortly be no more. And just interesting how he blew his strength into him. We hear tales like this coming from the native peoples in the Americas about how these giants shared their strength. And it's just interesting to note, is this what they're really talking about? They shared their strength. Well, maybe in some way, but it could be more than just that. They didn't just share their strength, they shared everything with us. And, we in no way deserve the credit for any of those things. Svatagor blew some of his strength into Ilya so that he could use the giant's own sword, but this just made matters worse. For now, 2 steel bands closed around the coffin every time it was hit with the sword. Resigning himself to his fate, Svatagor had Ilya tie his horse to a tree to die right beside his master. Okay, we read that already. Why am I reading that again? The second account of Svyatogor's demise is possibly the older of the two. Svyatogor often boasted of his great strength, going so far as to say that he could even lift Mother Earth. One day, while he was out riding, he came across a small bag which lay in his path. Unable to move it with the tip of his staff, Svatagor dismounted and with tremendous effort managed to hoist the bag as high as his knees. In doing so, he sweated so heavily that his sweat became blood. Sinking deep into the earth under the weight of the bag, he could not save himself. Interestingly, there is a further legend concerning Svatagor and his attempt to lift Mother Earth. In this story, Svatagor is out riding, trying to find a means by which to test his great strength. Okay? Another profile point of the giants. Okay? Because I've been saying for a long time that dolmen are the tests of strength. They're monuments to either the test of strength of an individual or several individuals in a group, let's say, however many giant humanoid type people could gather around one of these giant boulders and lift them, whether it be, the tops on these other sort of Neolithic constructions in Europe and elsewhere, and whatever many are here in the Americas, okay, and whatever size they are, no matter what size, who knows, whatever they come from, okay, are all tests of strength. Okay, they're not tombs, they're not astronomical aligned pointing devices or anything like that. They're tests of strength. It's real simple, okay? We don't have to overanalyze it, okay? And how many stories have we heard already about the giants and their tests of strength? How many times does it have to be repeated again and again and again to get it through people's thick heads? But, I don't know what kind of drugs they're on or how much drinking they do or whatever, but these fanciful flights into all kinds of things, I guess they make for great books and all this kind of stuff, but have nothing to do with what actually occurred. Okay, and when you look into it and you cover it the way we have here in a most scientific way, that's what it suggests. Not any of these other things. And people just off the top of their head, they haven't read another thing or looked at another thing or whatever. Just a knee-jerk reaction to want to go with anything to, make the conversation go around a million times, but have nothing to do with the truth. Tests of strength. In this story, Svatagor is out riding, trying to find a means by which to test his great strength. While riding, he spotted a stranger carrying a small bag slung over one shoulder, but no matter how hard he spurred his mount, he could not catch up with the stranger. Finally, Svyatogor called out to the stranger, who stopped and waited for the giant to catch up. When the two finally met, Svatagora asked the stranger where he was going in such a hurry and what he's carrying. The stranger placed his bag on the ground and explained to Svatagora that if he wanted to see what was in the bag, he should lift it up and take a look. Svatagora accepted the challenge, climbed down from his horse, and took hold of the bag. However, no matter how hard Svatagora strained, he couldn't move the bag even a fraction of a foot. Svatagora admitted defeat and asked the stranger what was in the bag. The stranger replied that the bag contained the weight of the world. Svatagora was impressed and asked the stranger for his name. The stranger replied that his name was Mikulushka Selyaninovich, but most people called him Mikula. Svatagora had heard of Mikula and asked him how he might learn his fate. Mikula told the giant to ride to the northern mountains, and once he got there, he should find a smithy under the tallest tree. The blacksmith will be there, and he will tell him the future. Oh, darn it. All right. Svatagor thanked Mikula and rode as hard as he could towards the northern mountains. When he reached the mountains, he found the blacksmith forging with both hands. Svatagor asked him what he was doing, and the blacksmith replied that he was forging the fates of all those destined to marry. Interested, Svatagor asked whom he is destined to marry. The blacksmith told him that his bride lives in the kingdom by the sea, dwelling in the city of the king, where she has lain for the past 30 years on a dunghill. Although he was disgusted by the thought, Svatagor decided to find the woman he was supposed to marry. When he found her, the sight repulsed him. In a poor and lowly hut, the woman was lying on a dunghill, her skin as black and as thick as the bark of a fir tree. Svatagor could not imagine marrying the maiden, so instead he took 500 rubles from his purse and laid them on the table before drawing his sword and stabbing the maiden through the breast. As Svatagor was leaving, the maiden stirred from her deep sleep, and as she stood up, the bark that had protected her for the past 30 years fell away, revealing her true beauty, the likes of which had never been seen before or since. Finding the money on the table, she quickly set herself up as a merchant and amassed a great fortune, sailing all over the known world and trading. Get that? Finally, her ships landed at the edge of the holy mountains, and Svatagor came to see the woman everyone was talking about. As soon as he saw her, he persuaded her to marry him. This is kind of interesting here that, she became this great trader and, sailed on this important figure, okay, that ran across this Svatagor fellow, and that she was beautiful, right? So does that surprise anybody? I mean, in today's world here, when you have all the, raging roid muscle heads at the gym, I know when I was working out, I attracted a lot of women. And that's how it is. Women are attracted to, at least some women are attracted to these guys that are powerful figures, powerful guys. And it wouldn't be surprising to me that, regular Homo sapien human women might be attracted to a giant guy like this or whatever because of his, super, strength and animal magnetism. So we shouldn't be surprised that, the female members of the human race of Homo sapiens were attracted to the giant humanoids. I don't see that as being anything unusual at all. It seems highly likely to me. On their wedding night, Svatagora, as soon as he saw her, he persuaded her to marry him. On their wedding night, Svatagora noticed the scar on her breast and asked his new bride what had caused it. She replied that she had slept for 30 years on a dunghill in the city of the king that lay within the kingdom by the sea. When she awakened from her deep sleep, she found 500 rubles on the table, a scar on her breast, and that she was no longer covered in fur bark. It was then that Svyatogor realized that this is the woman he was destined to marry, and that there is no way of avoiding the fate decreed by God. And here's the interesting part of this article here from this website here. Later accounts seem to confuse the relationship between Svyatogor and Ilya Muromets, tending to make the two one of the same. Svyatogor being the pre-Christian personification, Bronze Age personification, and Ilya the post-Christian one. Okay, the Iron Age one, the Christian era one. Okay, like that happened to all these legends and myths in all these countries. They were converted into something more Christian like, and the giant being secondary in the story. But as I say, be tending to make the two one and the same. And Svyatogor being the pre-Christian personification, and Ilya the post-Christian one. Svyatogor and Ilya share some similarity with the Serbian folk hero Marko Kraljevic, who also wields a mace and is incredibly strong. Belarus Rodnovers worship Svatagor as a god. Okay, those are just worshippers of God, spiritual worshippers that have that sort of nickname. But Belarus Rodnovers worship Svatagor as a god, so that's interesting. But I thought this thing was interesting. This legend and tale of Svatagor was interesting and actually covered several of the profile points of the giants. And it's a sympathetic character and a tragic character and a heroic character in Russian folklore and legend. Okay, he's not a bad guy. And it's just another place, another area of the world where they have legends of the giants who are contributing to society. They have something to contribute, something to pass on, something positive. Okay, so we have all these positive stories of the giants over and over again. Okay, starting to get the picture here of why they might want to suppress the actual history of the past, the history of the giants. Okay, if they passed all these things on to us, all right, and if they were these sympathetic characters and not these bad, evil guys, all right, so that's a totally different perception of the past and a different perception of the giants, certainly. So, where else are you going to get it except here on this channel? Where else have you heard it? You haven't heard it anywhere. Okay, but here I am going over with you again and again and again the tales and legends, the accounts, etc., the actual facts and everything else. I mean, if you don't get it by now, you're brain dead, obtuse. All right, you're just clueless, and you're not getting the picture here. Okay, why would they want to suppress the fact that the giants passed on all these things to us? Well, then, we can't take credit for those things, right? So why wouldn't they suppress that? Okay, they want to go along with the fairy tale, right? That sort of every sort of human being, Homo sapien leader of the past is sort of change history to suit their own purposes, you know, to tell this fairy tale story about human beings of the past who did all these wonderful and amazing and impressive things, whatever, either didn't do at all, or if they did do it, they got the knowledge from the giants. Right? They didn't come up with it on their own. We didn't come up with it on our own. Okay? Not that we're dummies or anything like that, but we didn't come up with it on our own. It was there already for us to have. Okay? Passed on to us. Can't take credit for it. But it belongs to the giants. And again, as I said, we owe the giants a debt that we can never repay because we killed them all off at some later time period when the whole history of the past or anything they might have done for anybody was totally lost, or it didn't matter because they needed to be displaced and eliminated. And the evidence of this we've gone over again and again and again seems to be evidence of more genocide going at Bright Winter Caves, right? Besides all the excavations of jumbled up piles of bones of giants by the hundreds, okay? These people that gave us so much, we slaughtered them, all right? So another black mark on the human record that we can all be proud of. But in any case, guys, I thought you might want to hear about this legend here, okay, and the profile points associated with it, all right? Again, not a malevolent character, not an evil being, not a cannibal, all right? Legends of Giant from Russia. All right, guys, so anyway, I hope you enjoyed that legend there, and I hope you can make sense out of things now, and I hope you will stop listening to the Marzulli people of the world, okay? They're giving you complete fiction, has nothing to do with the history of the giants at all. No aliens are involved. It's all homegrown. Okay, these are the kind of things you're going to hear on my channel, okay? You're not going to hear in the mainstream, right? We already know what that is. They deny everything, right? But all these flights of fancy and the alternative have been going around for 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years or whatever it is, okay? We have a new revised version today based on what we can know, the facts, and whatever we can gain from the accounts, actual archaeology, anthropology, and the legends of the giants of the past to give us a complete picture, all right? Not cherry pick it for our own purposes or whatever. If there were stories about evil giants, I'm going to read them to you, and I have, all right? But there seems to be all these tales of good giants to go along with them, and in some cases like this, no stories of bad giants at all. All right, so think about it anyway, and I hope you enjoyed that. And please do hit the like button, and please do hit the subscribe button if you're interested in hearing about the truth about the past and the truth about the giants and the truth about a number of other things that has been kept from you. And you've been going down rabbit holes in the alternative research side or whatever because that's where they want you to go too. All right, so you're totally confused. All right, but here we're trying to clarify things a bit with actual research and knowledge. Okay, you're looking at the same stuff I am. All right. So, in any case, guys, please do subscribe if you're not a subscriber, and we will continue going on with this into the future. All right. Anyway, guys, Bugcat7 signing out. Peace.